Have been anticipating this interview, as a lot of you have, for a while, since I was able to announce that it's set up. It's the return of Matan Goldstein, first-year student at UVA, talking about the really unfortunate subject of anti-Semitism rearing its ugly head over and over and over again at UVA. And I'm glad this young man has the spine and the character to stand up in light of the fact that it's a very difficult thing to do in this environment with so little support. Matan, welcome back to the Schilling Show.
Thank you again for having me.
So you were here before. It's been a few months, and maybe we have some people listening who did not hear about you. So I'd like to start out just so people know who you are and where you're coming from, and then I want to get into some of the specifics of what you're encountering. So just tell us a little bit of background.
So my name is Matan Goldstein. I am 18, studying trying to study classics and archaeology at the University of Virginia. My family, they all are from Israel.
Yes.
And I'm the first born American.
Mm-hmm.
I have dual citizenship.
Yes.
And ever since the October 7th attack, I've been very vocal on campus and have been suffering for being so vocal.
And I want to be very clear that you are incredibly respectful. I have seen you under stressful situation as shown on television at one of the anti-Semitic rallies that were happening at UVA. And basically you had to turn the other cheek attitude. So it's not like you're out there in people's faces and screaming at them, as we've seen done to you. And I give you great credit. And I also want to say something to you, because I've told you that I really admire you before, but you said something that really struck me. And you said, I'm 18 years old. And you have the maturity of someone who's lived a lot longer than that, and that's a huge compliment. I think in this country we used to have people who were grown up at 18 years old back in the greatest generation around World War II, and we had a lot of people who did a lot of hard things at a young age. These days that's delayed maybe for their entire lives, and it never happens. So kudos to you at 18 years old to have a spine like you have and the character that you have developed. You mentioned to me last time, but I want to again go over this, what you experienced almost immediately upon arrival at the University of Virginia. And I could hardly believe it. I mean, I believe what you're telling me, but to just think that this is the reality of what we're dealing with. I mean, it almost started up immediately, did it not?
Yeah. Even I would say the first day at orientation, I introduced myself as being an Israeli American. And an Egyptian on my floor instantly came to me and told me, "Oh, so you're that Israeli. You know I hate you, right?" And I didn't know him.
Yeah.
I only just met him and I was trying to be friends with him.
Yes.
I didn't know he came from Egypt. And every single time I would make an effort. My grandfather even, who fought in the 1973 Yom Kippur War against Egypt. He's been paralyzed from the waist down. He hasn't been able to walk since 1973 because of an Egyptian. When I told him about the story of this Egyptian in my dorm building, he told me, you have to try to befriend him to show him that we Israelis have moved past that. And every single time that this Egyptian, my age, would tell me that we hate you, that there's no peace, it's only on paper, my parents will kill me if I will ever befriend an Israeli. And now he sees me and he just turns the other way.
I think this is indicative of a dichotomy between the cultures. And this is speaking with a broad brush, but I think it's something that can be justified by empirical evidence, is that Israel promotes a culture of life, promotes a culture of peace and getting along, of acceptance. I mentioned earlier today before you came in that according to Dennis Prager, who was talking about this yesterday, there are about 2 million Palestinian Arabs who are living in Israel broadly unmolested, and yet there's such an outcry when they talk about the settlements in the West Bank or in Gaza that we can't have that incursion, but Israel has welcomed people in from various cultures that may even be hostile to them, and yet they don't have the same animosity. What do you make of that?
I think it's incredibly, I would even say lazy for many of these, I guess, ridiculous comments. No one who is espousing these views has ever either been to the Middle East. They've never been to Israel. I can assure you of that. They've never learned about Israel in a very neutral perspective. I think it's incredibly hypocritical if aside from the October 7th attacks, if one looks at the statistics of Israeli terror attacks done on Israelis, many of them are done or are committed by Israeli citizens who also have a Palestinian citizenship, but that doesn't matter. Israel, after that, doesn't suddenly issue laws kicking out all of the 2 million Israeli Arabs living inside the country. Not at all. However, that's still okay to criticize Israel for being in apartheid, even though currently there's not a single Jew living in the West, in the areas A and B of the Palestinian Authority.
What would happen if they happened to venture into that area for, let's say, lunch at a cafe or something? Not even to live there, just to go in.
I would give, let's take me as an example, I would give myself 30 seconds before I would be stoned to death.
This is such important information, and I'm glad that you put it like that because it's a very concrete way of looking at it. It's not abstract at all. Is that there's a complete double standard, and I don't think most people, as you mentioned earlier, Matan, that they have never been there. They don't care to inform themselves enough to understand what you just said. But this is not a two-way street. I mean, there's always room for improvement in any relationship with any two parties, but this is not like you have two people who are looking for the same outcome. You have one group which is looking for a peaceful coexistence, another group which is looking essentially for annihilation.
Exactly that. You put it very well.
So let's talk about hostile interactions since the last time you were here. I've seen and heard you interviewed in other forums, and I understand there have been threats and maybe even some physical assaults. So would you tell us what you yourself have encountered since our last time together?
So since our last time, I'll just say that from October 25th onwards, I've been physically assaulted twice. I've been called a filthy Jew by a random onlooker. I would like to just give the context of that situation.
Yes, please.
I was eating lunch. And I used to wear a yarmulke.
I remember you had it when you came here last time.
Even more so, my ex-girlfriend, she lost friends because she was in a relationship with me. Currently, when I enter my dorm building, no one acknowledges my existence for supporting Israel. And the situation has gotten to such a horrible extent that I've been persuaded, both by my family members, both by I've come to the conclusion, even myself, that it is safer for me, if I would like to stay here, to take off my yarmulke.
You know, that is sad. It's tragic. It's horrifying to me because this sort of mentality, when tolerated for any one group, could at some point be turned on any other group. And that's why I would encourage people who look at this and say, well, I'm not Jewish, I'm not Israeli, so it doesn't really affect me. I can be indifferent to this, to realize that when they start picking on people and trying to pick them off and harass them and intimidate them and frighten them and create a culture of fear, that those people are bullies who enjoy that sort of power and will gladly turn on others. I mean, history has shown us that. So this is not just an issue for you. This is an issue the entire community should be concerned with, Matan.
I agree with you. Every single time I think about these attacks, I cannot help but remember the letter that President George Washington wrote to the first Jews that came to the United States, in which he promised them that as Americans, they would be treated as equal citizens. They would be treated with civil rights, equal rights, religious freedoms. Now, really, I cannot help but think, how has America been able to uphold this promise that General and President Washington promised so long ago? Because it feels really that it's such a far-off world. I'm really, like you said, I'm only 18.
Yeah.
And I'm not here to be a politician. I never wanted to be.
No.
And yet I cannot help but see that this indifference of I would like to say our side,
yes,
has put me into the limelight.
And it's not a place you desired to go, but you are a hero for many. We're talking with Matan Goldstein. If you have comments or questions, maybe a word of support, 977-1070 is the phone number. We do have one segment left. Let's go to the break before we run out of time. Also, we do want to get to the referendum at UVA and what that meant, the passage of that UVA administration, as much as time will permit. In our final segment, 977-1070. Schilling Show continues with Matan in a moment. Oh, how I wish we had more time with Matan Goldstein, who's a first-year UVA student, describing these incidents of anti-Semitism at UVA and how he's bearing up under the load. So I want to ask you, because I think this is instructive to the listening audience, if you have actually considered leaving UVA because of this completely unbearable and intolerable situation, which has cost you personal relationships and I'm sure a lot of your mental health as well.
Yes, I have considered leaving the university. In the last couple of months, my mental health really was drained.
Yes.
I remember entering my dorm room night after night and just breaking down into tears because at the end of the day, I feel alone. However, I came to the conclusion that the Jewish people, throughout the centuries, although being less vocal, their achievements are what make our voice heard. And so by me leaving this university, I'm also depriving myself of giving something to future generations. This education at UVA is incredible. My department is supportive, and I still have many supportive people.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm going to ask you to put your headphones on because in our remaining minutes, we do have a caller and also some messages of support that have come in to 977-1070. Christina and Kathleen called in with positive messages from Matan, and now we say hello to Nancy. Oh, did we lose Nancy? All right, we'll see if we can get Nancy back. I'm not sure what happened there. I wanted to talk to you about the resolution that was passed, sadly, the referendum, University of Virginia, apartheid divest, which already you can tell where they're coming from when they name the resolution that. So tell us about your take on this and what happens when they pass this. How does this impact the Jewish community at UVA?
So when it comes to the legislation itself,
yes,
nothing really can alter the formation and the laws of the institution.
Right.
$14 billion now are not going to be divested from Israeli companies because that would lead to all of the students no longer using MacBooks. All of the students no longer using all of their textbooks.
Yeah.
All of the food on campus somehow is going to be served in another way. There's no way.
Practically speaking, it's not going to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
However, by allowing such a referendum to pass, you're basically, or the administration is basically giving the nod to anti-Semitism. Anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism go hand in hand.
Yes, they do.
If one has ever read the Bible, one will see that the Jewish people and the land of Israel are intertwined. And so when you pass a referendum, first of all condemning the land of Israel and saying and condemning it as being a land for the Jewish people, not that it can't be shared, but that it can't be for the Jewish people too, then that means that you're for a genocide of 7 million Jews living right now from the river to the sea.
We hear that term at UVA all the time. Let's go to the phones here, and I'm going to get to as much as I can. I'll ask you to be brief, and we say hello to Tom. Tom, you're on with Matan Goldstein. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. I have a question. I know that thanks to the Jefferson Society, we know that UVA has a huge department of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I'm wondering what position do they take on the anti-Semitism, and what are they willing to do about it?
All right, let's get a response. And Tom, thank you very much for that. Go ahead.
Sadly, at this moment, I haven't really seen much. I know during this, or with the founding of this committee, two of the people there are staunch anti-Semites. On October 25th, I was verbally abused by one of the professors there, and she still teaches here. So, not much.
Okay. Ken writes in, please let this young man know my wife and I have a guest room in our home if he ever needs it for however long he needs it. So you have people out there, Ken, thank you. And people
Thank you.
who looking out for you more than you know. Let's say hello to Jerry. Jerry, quickly, please, because we're running tight on time. Go right ahead.
Well, I think there's more support in the community than he would ever know. My father was in a 71st Infantry Division that freed the Gunskirchen lager prison camps, and what he witnessed against the Jews. And the Jews have every right to annihilate their enemies. That it never happens again what happened between the 30s and the 40s to the Jewish population. And as a Christian, we still support that the Jews have a right to defend themselves, and if they want to annihilate all of Hamas, they have every right to do that.
Jerry, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I would just like to add that I think after all, at the end of the day, I am an American. And you too, Rob, are an
Yes,
American.
That's right.
And I think that an attack on me, I would expect my fellow Americans to see it as an attack on a brother.
Absolutely, I do. It's why you're here, and I think a lot of people listening feel the same way. Let's go quickly because we're just about out of time. We got about 20 seconds. Nancy, please go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, full support, and my daughter and I will be notifying the chaplain of the University Parish of St. Thomas Aquinas, Father Joseph Anthony, about your situation and see if we can't get the Catholic Who's to support you. God bless you. I apologize for our nation and for the university. God bless. Bye-bye.
God bless you too.
Okay. Wow. I'm so glad we got all of that in, and I think that's just a fraction of the number of people who are writing in and expressing support. We've got about 30 seconds left to close this up. How can we help you? What can we do, practically speaking?
Practically speaking, show your support for Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Indifference is what allows this anti-Semitism. The second that you take a side, that you show that you have a side, you're already doing more than 90% of everyone else.
All right, that's it. I wish we had another hour with Matan, but we'll have him back. And thank you for your calls. Matan, thank you for joining us today on The Schilling Show.
Thank you so much.